potentially in combination with chemical, that maybe there is some kind of visual component to detecting a shell that's empty versus not.
Wait, can you repeat that again?
So I was just saying that has the visual cue been completely ruled out just because, just with my own eyes, when you're walking around, you can sometimes tell the difference between empty shells and non-empty shells just because they look different, because they get, kind of roll around a lot
Yeah.
and get more eroded and that kind of thing. So I was just wondering if that visual cue has been completely ruled out in this
I
system.
don't think it's should be ruled out. They do have like really big eyes, and a new jazz student in my lab, in the lab I'm in, not my lab. That would be exciting. Is going to be studying with vision. I don't know if a ton is known about it. Yeah, the thing is in the.
Sorry. Slide up.
Okay.
She'll get some PowerPoint so quickly.
One thing we do have reason to want like the newly available shell as opposed to like an old damaged shell because of like the shell detects information, and once the shell becomes damaged, it could be like smashed by say a green gap. So that's kind of a digression, but the like visual of the, like a shell that looks damaged wouldn't necessarily be good. But I thought maybe vision to some extent.
Thank you, Ian. Okay. Our next speaker will be Ian Breslow from Cornell University. Ian is the marine mammal intern mentored by Nadine Isiak from UMass Boston. Also mentored by Dr. Andrea Bogomoni from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and Lisa Setti from the Center for Coastal Studies of Provincetown in Massachusetts. Ian will be presenting on environmental and anthropogenic factors contributing to harbor seal and gray seal counts.
Thank you very much, Brian. And so, like Brian said, my name is Ian Breslow. I'm a recent graduate from Cornell University. Just graduated in May. And before I begin, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and being a part of my Schultz experience. So, like Amisha and David talked about in their presentations, there are thousands of gulls on this island. And the way that they know all the information that they know about them is by the bands that they have on their legs. So now, wait, why am I talking about gulls right now? So in 1972, the Marine Mammal Protection Act was implemented, and this federally protected both species of seals. But this makes it very difficult to do those direct observations like Amisha and David do on the gulls. So how do we conduct population censuses of those seals? So what has been done since 1960s is that scientists have conducted boat and aerial surveys. But what those counts do limit, however, is that those only show the hauled out seals, or the seals that are on land. Seals are both terrestrial. Seals live on land and in water, so that only gets a limit of the population that exists. So what scientists who study these seals do is they create what's called correction factors, or an approximate percentage of seals that are in the water versus the land. But this is only an estimate, and that correction factor varies from study to study. So, for instance, if creating these whole population estimates of a species, there's a giant range that's associated with the species. So, for instance, the most recent stock assessment of gray seals came out, and the range of gray seals in just the Gulf of Maine was between 329,000 to 682,000. That's a giant range. So what I'm hoping to figure out is what conditions should we survey so that the hold-out counts of seals are in greater number and these correction factors can be lowered and that range can decrease. And a further knowledge of what the population of these seals are can help with their conservation efforts to protect these species. So before we even go out with these surveys, we have to know why these seals haul out in the first place. The main reason being rest. Seals tend to forage at multiple kilometers away from their sleeping sites, so like Duck Island. So they're exerting a ton of energy going to go get food, and then when they come back, they want to rest that off, like humans when we eat. We want to sometimes people rest it off. So harbor seals during the summer between May and June, they have their pups. And for approximately 3 weeks, they are with their pups, and they stay on land with them, so they'll be hauled out more. On the contrary, gray seals don't have pups in the summer, but what they do, however, is molt, and they lose their fur. They lose their coat of fur, which is a reason why they want to stay on land, because without that fur, that it's harder for them to stay in that colder water. Like humans, seals are mammals, and they also like social interaction. And also, seals are not apex predators. They do get preyed upon by great white sharks, so they'll want to haul out to avoid the sharks like this seal did. So those factors I talked about are the studied factors. Those are known. The unknown factors, however, are not studied as much, are the anthropogenic and abiotic factors, such as time of day and season. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of a seven-year internship since 2011 on Shoals, and we surveyed Duck Island, those ledges right over there. And what we're doing part of that internship is trying to conduct a population census of the two species. And this has occurred every summer, and we go at low tide because a good percentage of those ledges aren't available at all tides, as Katie will discuss in her presentation after mine. So, since season and tidal state are constant, and prey abundance and location is not well known around Duck Island and what the species those seals actually eat, I'm not going to be looking at all of those. I'll be looking at those top three. Abiotic conditions such as temperature and wind speed, time of day, and disturbances, like this woman on a unicorn, that's Duck Island. That is right there. This woman, that happens. So going into more of the disturbances, what I'll be focusing more on is the types of vessels that are seen around Duck Island and the effect that these vessels have, such as lobster boats, recreational boats, and commercial boats. So if those of you who haven't been around Duck Island, there are many, many lobster traps surrounding Duck Island. And what I'm hypothesizing is that since the lobster boats are present year-round, I was hypothesizing that these seals will acclimate to those lobster boats' noises, the noise that the lobster boats will create. So we will see not much of a decrease in the hauled out counts of the seals compared to recreational and commercial boats. So that's each of the three questions that I'm trying to answer. Is how do abiotic conditions such as air and water temperature and wind speed affect the call-out counts? The second question is trying to figure out what is the optimal time of day to go out and survey. And the third question being what effect do vessels and vessel type have on those call-out counts. So onto my study system, looking at harbor seals and gray seals. On the left we have a harbor seal, also known as the common seal. It is the most widely distributed fosid seal in the North Atlantic. And they are characterized by their characteristic V-shaped nose right here, and that's how we tell them apart from gray seals. And like I said before, their breeding season is May and June, so on Duck Island they have their pups, and they'll want to stay on land more because of that. On the contrary, on our right we have gray seals. They're also known as the horsehead seal. As you see, their heads are much more horse-like compared to the harbor seal. It's hard to see in this photo, but they actually have two wide apart nostrils compared to the V-shaped nose, like us humans do. And even though they're not having their pups, they have them during January and February, not during the summer, they are molting. So that's enough, I'm emphasizing that's why they would be hauled out. So how we conduct our surveys is approximately 20 to 30 times a summer, we plan to go on surveys. And we follow the route exhibited above. So prior to even going on the survey, we record all abiotic conditions like air temperature, water temperature, and wind speed from various sources. We get the air temperature and wind speed from station IOSN3 from the Isle of Shoals, and our water temperature from Jenks Beach, New Hampshire, which is right over there. So what my partner Katie and I do on these surveys is with the assistance of a captain at Shoals, we'll go around, follow this track, and one of us will be taking pictures of these ledges. And the other person, who's the data guy, in this case me, as being the data person, is recording down the photo numbers that correspond to the ledges that Katie, in this case, is taking pictures of. So that's why it'll be easier for when we go and count them, we'll know the counts on each individual ledge. So, additionally, while they're out there, they're also recording the boat types, if there are any boats seen out there, as well as the location and what type they are. So, let me preface this. So now, with all that, we go and count the seals, and now Katie and I go down into the downstairs pigeons right here, and we count the seals and differentiate them by species. So now I take that data, and I'm going to be answering my three questions. So first, I'm now going to show a series of graphs where the harbor seal count will always be on the left y-axis, and the gray seal counts will be on the right y-axis. And with these two graphs, I'm looking at air temperature. And as you can see there, as air temperature increases, there's no noticeable distinction. There's no trend between counts of seen at different temperatures versus the counts for both harbor and gray seals. So now we move on to water temperature. Same thing is exhibited. Again, we have harbor seals versus gray seals. And with increased water temperature, if anything, it's even more variable with water temperature. And lastly, wind speed. Again, same thing is exhibited. The counts vary with different wind speeds. So on to my second point. So that was interesting. I found that something that doesn't have an effect. As I move on to my second question, is figuring out what time of day should we survey. So for this graph, we have the mean counts of harbor seals on the y-axis and the time of day on the x-axis. So in the 7 years that the internship has gone on, we've conducted 161 surveys. And what I did was I separated them into 3 different times a day based on light availability for the camera so we can actually take pictures, because you can't really take pictures in the dark. So I separated them into 5-hour intervals, where the morning is between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m., afternoons between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and evening between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. And for harbor seals, the mean count is highest in the morning between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. But what's interesting is that as the day progresses, there's not a noticeable decline or increase. It fluctuates, and with the lowest being at afternoon, but it's not much lower than in the morning. So it's pretty consistent across the day. But when we look at gray seal, on the other hand, a trend is actually exhibited. In the morning, they haul out in greater numbers, and as the day progresses, they are slowly declining. So what I'd like to propose is that for future surveys, we want to go out in the morning, because that's when haul out numbers perceived to be the greatest. And more surveys are needed to validate this point. So on to my third question, which is on the effect of vessels. So when we went out and we conduct our surveys, we write down if a boat was present or not. So if no boats were present, it was labeled as none. If only lobster boats were present, it was labeled as lobster. If only recreational or commercial boats were present, it's labeled as rec. If both lobster and recreational boats are present during the same survey, it's labeled as both. And due to artifact of sampling, sometimes the boat type wasn't specified, so that's labeled as unidentified. And for harbor seals, when no boats were present, it is a much higher mean count, as luckily as I predicted that would be. But what's contrary to what I was expecting is that the effect that only lobster boats had was pretty similar and more inclined to be with what the recreational boats are. So these seals, contrary to what I thought, are not acclimating to these lobster boats. They are being impacted. So now we compare that to gray seals. The same thing is being exhibited. The highest counts when no boats are present, and when lobster boats, and the lobster boat effect compared to recreational and both is more similar to when those boats are present versus no boats are present. So these seals are not acclimated. So to sum everything up, abiotic factors such as air temperature and water temperature and wind speed, they appear to have no association between counts of harbor and gray seals. The harbor and gray seals, they both haul out in the morning in greater numbers, so I would recommend going and conducting surveys between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. And both seals haul out more when no boats are present, and the type of boat, which was interesting, did not have that. The lobster boats did not cause the seals to acclimate. They weren't acclimating to that boat. So where this study can go, definitely continue doing surveys, conducting surveys to make sure that what I stated is continuing and that those changes aren't occurring. We should definitely continue monitoring levels of human interaction. More specifically, looking at possibly more than just those boats. Just this year, we've seen lobster boats, recreational boats, women in unicorn floaties, kayaks, kayakers around. So we've seen definitely different levels. So we want to try to figure out the better times to conduct these surveys that we're not taking them while these vessels are out there. And then lastly, we should be looking into other possible drivers that I haven't stated, such as the prey abundance, if we can get more precise thoughts as to what the seals are actually consuming, and the the numbers of their prey around this area. The effect that injuries and entanglements, such as this guy who got entangled, if that's what impact that's having. And lastly, looking at the predator abundance. Because as Jen mentioned, before, as an introduction to when things started, the Gulf of Maine is one of the biggest, fastest warming regions. And this is creating a more suitable habitat for great white sharks, the seal predator. So with the possible increase in sharks in this area, that may cause seals to haul out more to hide from them. And also, sharks are federally protected as well. So if sharks are entering this area, not much we can do about that either. So I'd like to thank my three mentors, Dr. Bogomoni, Dr. Lisiak, and Dr. Setti. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to my partner, Katie and Tomasi, throughout this, basically for being such a great partner and for controlling my sanity. Thank you so much. Any questions?
So you binned your observations between clock hours, morning, afternoon, and evening. These animals don't have clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your results would have changed if a common way to look at marine mammal behavior is reference to sunrise and sunset? So an hour before sunrise, an hour after sunrise, an hour before sunset, an hour after sunset.
So the times that I used it was when the low tide was throughout the day. So the main factor that's been we conduct our surveys at low tide because more of the ledges are exposed, so they'll want to haul out when those wet areas are exposed. So it's more of an impact on when the low tide is. But you're right. It was throughout the time of day. They do relate with the sun and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it might be a
But,
little
like,
bit of
it is a little-
interaction
'cause, like-
between sunrise, sunset, and low tide. Because
Exactly,
again,
yeah.
the thermal issues that they have to deal with.
Yeah, they thermoregulate. They want to go at different times. The water temperature does change throughout the day. So you are right, and more surveys can be used to figure that out.
Can you explain how your results would help, how would you validate that your results would actually positively improve the correction factor? Is there any way to do that?
So that's a very good question. So how I would think to approach that is, if we're able to find the right conditions that would have the seals be hauled out in greater numbers. Our study doesn't radio tag, but how they create those correction factors is by radio tagging them so they can sense when they're hauling out. And possibly, when we find those right conditions, there'll be more of those seals that are hauled out on the land at the given time. So when they're creating that factor, there'll be less seals in the water, so that correction factor is lower. And possibly that would, so they'll see more seals, they can actually see more seals. So then when they actually make that estimate, that correction factor is lower, so that range is decreased.
Could you talk a little bit more about the boats that you see in the area, and maybe if you have data that's more than a presence absence data, if there's data about how close the boats are to the haul out sites, and then the numbers of boats, and maybe how our boats being there conducting the surveys are accounted for?
So when we go out there, we also record how many seals flush or go from the land to the water, which means that we're directly disturbing them. But it's kind of hard to figure out exactly how far these other boats that we see are from the ledges without actually directly measuring them. But what we have seen is that some recreational boats have gone probably within 10 to 20 feet of the ledges, or virtually on top of the seals, and that causes them to flush in greater quantity. Our second to last survey, we saw a group of 15 kayakers go right within the low tide ledges. We were fortunate that before they got there, there were 240 gray seals on the southwest ledges, which are not visible right now. There were 240 of them. When we came all the way back around, there were 2 left. They flushed 238 of them. So that has a completely direct impact, and we can definitely look at when that may affect those have as well.
One more quick question.
Go, Amisha. Mine's not a real question.
So when we do resites of the gulls, we will look at specific areas on the island, looking at the roofs, or so that way you see non-breeding populations, or if I go at night versus during the day, I'd probably catch both baits at a nest instead of just one. So do you think that the time of day might be